Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have Celestia raising $100 million. TIA is up 14% as a consequence. That was a coin we spoke a lot about at the top of the year. Federal judges slam the SEC for lack of clarity on Bitcoin and ETH. Give you a quick lowdown there. And also Polymarket, our favorite prediction market in this cycle, reportedly seeking $50 million in funding with potential for token as a way for users to validate the outcome of real-world events. We'll go to Legendary to find out what that means in just a little bit. We've also got the latest on price action crypto and NFTs and a deep dive into Shape, which we are very excited about, the Shape universe, after our partnership announcement yesterday, to lay out why we have partnered with this L2, which has attracted the very best creators and collectors in the space. So stay tuned for that. Today, I've got Legendary in the co-host seat, and we are very privileged to have Bonafide Han, NFT Maxi, founder of Deca and Shape, with us on Twitter and on YouTube if you prefer to be watching in. We're ready to get into it in just a little bit. Before we do, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is incredibly risky. We do not know anything for certain, unfortunately, so please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Han, welcome to the stage. How are you doing? It's been a while since your first appearance with us. How are things going?
Thanks for having me again. I'm really excited to be talking here, and can't wait to talk about Shape.
Absolutely. We had absolutely no idea necessarily that when we first had you on the show, when we first met, we would end up working with each other so soon. I don't think one of the things we had said when we first met was like, maybe we will work with each other. Just kind of clicked quite quickly. So looking forward to kind of break that down for the audience a little bit later, because it's a pretty cool story and it's a pretty cool journey. So very excited to talk about some of the technicalities of Shape as well. But we've got all the headlines as usual, guys. We're always hitting the headlines and price action for the first half an hour or so. Legendary, how are you doing? It's Tuesday, the 24th of September. How's it going on your side?
GMGM doing pretty well. We had a big day yesterday, not only announcing the partnership with Shape, but also an hour before that, announcing the rebranding. And basically, we had to make sure that rebranding goes out before partnership announcement, because we definitely want to do that in the new look and feel. So that was a bit of an intense day, but I'm very, very happy with how that went. And we are still in the process of rolling out all the new assets, and it's been fun to play around with them. And also still in the process of learning new things. As of today, when we started the live stream, obviously we changed the logo on the Modern Market account, on the X account. And when you do that, then you don't have a golden check mark. It takes you up to a week to get the blue check mark back. That I did know. What I didn't know is that we can't live stream on the Modern Market account. So we are live streaming on your XP, my X, but the Modern Market for the time being can't live stream the video, because only privileged blue check mark accounts can do that.
Oh no, that's terrible news. Although I very much appreciate your work on the technical side, because when you were describing the work you were doing to like sort out our new logo in the top right hand corner, if you're watching on the video stream, I basically have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're saying. Those words mean nothing to me, but I appreciate that something that you're doing is making some of the engine move. So I'm very grateful for that. But look, let's get into it today. We've got lots and lots to cover, so let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into the price action for the majors. We got Bitcoin pretty much flat, actually, 63.5k. We've got ETH also flat at around 2.6k. Solana is up a couple of percent at $146. Just so you got a sense of where we've been moving in the week, ETH is outperforming in the last 7 days, up 14%. Bitcoin's up 7%, and Solana is up 10%. So ETH had been struggling for a while relative to the other things, making a little bit of a comeback in that respect. Getting into the headlines themselves, as we mentioned, Celestia raised $100 million. TIA is up 14% to $6.2. CoinDesk said that the Celestia Foundation said that it raised $100 million in a fundraising round led by Bain Capital Crypto. The news comes as Celestia's native token is down 54% since the beginning of 2024. So it's down a fair amount, but it's rallied a little bit. There's also big unlocks coming, which we'll touch on in a second. Number 2, federal judges slammed the SEC for lack of clarity on Bitcoin and ETH. This was a story in Decrypt Media where they shared that, the judges were not happy with the lack of clarity coming from the SEC, basically, and we'll get into some of the further details in a moment. And then finally, Polymarket reportedly seeking $50 million in funding with potential for a token as a way for users to validate the outcome of real-world events. That'll be interesting when Legendary gives his breakdown in a little bit. On the notable sale side, we have 2 CryptoPunks with 3D glasses, both selling for 46.89 ETH. That's nice to see. Then also one of my this is a really nice ringer, actually. Dmitry Cherniak ringer selling for 12 ETH. I think this is one of the more aesthetic ones. I enjoyed seeing this sale go through. I like that one a lot. But let's head over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, Legendary, to get a sense of what's going on the NFT side.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the JPEGs. Bored Apes are down 2%, sitting at a 11.6 ETH floor. Pudgies are only down 0.5%, 10.7 ETH floor for them. Azukis are actually up 1.7%, very close to a 5.8 ETH floor. Miladys are up 0.5%, 3.23 ETH floor for them. DGOTs, unfortunately, are continuing the downtrend. They are down another 16%, back down to 1.05 ETH floor, down 36% over the last 7 days. I think they peaked at 1.6 ETH when they announced the move to the DGOTs token. And also, we have a new mint that did pretty well. We have obviously not only a Mudang meme coin, but we have to have a cute Mudang NFT collection as well. It was a bit of a stealth mint yesterday. Total supply of 2.2K NFTs. I think it was limited to 2 per wallet. Again, free mint, and now sitting at a 0.031 ETH floor. So whoever minted basically is up a 31x on that.
That's pretty nice. Did you get involved in this? When did you see this one?
In researching for the NFT update for today. So too late.
Too late, unfortunately. That's a shame.
They are cute. I kind of want one.
Yeah, they are from what I can tell. Just coming to you, Han, quickly. I know we're going to get into the bigger stuff about Shape and your story as an NFT collector in a moment as well. Just general thoughts on the NFT market as we kind of close up our NFT segment here. Any big thoughts or smaller thoughts at the moment? Anything you're noticing?
Yeah, I mean, for NFTs, at least in the art sector, I think still considered slow. But as we'll talk about in the Shape segment, I think there's a lot of pent-up energy that's about to be released on Shape. So really excited for that part.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think some of your explanation on that a little bit later will be helpful to people to kind of imagine what you're speaking about in more detail. So all of that is to come. That's the headlines, the price action, the NFT action. Let's get into the first headline today straight away. This is the Celestia news, where basically Celestia has raised a lot of money. Blockchain data availability project Celestia Foundation raises $100 million. The news comes as obviously T has fallen a lot at the start of the year. Remember, this is the token which promised quite a lot in the sense that it was one that lots of people bought into because of the expectation of receiving a number of airdrops in return. And they did get one airdrop. Remember, Dimension was a pretty big one, or one that at least people were, I think received a reasonable amount. After that, kind of went quiet. I think this ran as high as $15 to $20 at one point in time, kind of gave back all the gains as the year progressed, back at $5 to $6 now. Big unlocks coming in October. Chris Beniski, like a very prominent investor on the timeline, is got in very, very early and has been bull posting it very, very much. And some people are saying, well, you would do because you got in so early, and there are unlocks coming in October. So I think that's one of the things that is not reported in this article, which we'll share some of the background information of, but it is important for you to have some context on maybe some of the price action. So the fresh round of capital means that the foundation has a total of $155 million in funds and saw participation from Syncrasy Capital, 1KX, Robot Ventures, and Placeholder. The team did not detail where the new capital will be used, but highlighted that core developers are focused on its new roadmap unveiled earlier in the month. So very significant raise from that perspective. And just in terms of what they do, before Celestia, what they say on their official blog is that scaling permissionless blockchains typically meant optimizing a monolithic L1, where applications run on a single shared execution layer. But Celestia is not constrained by that execution layer overhead, enabling a path to scale throughput beyond the current monolithic constraints. So obviously taking a different approach, and that kind of definitely captured people's imagination, at least at the start of the year. And actually still, I think people are pretty positive on that concept. That's the kind of headline information I think is important here, including that stuff about the unlocks. Legendary, do you have anything to add here? Any thoughts, whether that's to do with price action, anything to add from the technical perspective? I know your understanding on that is a bit better than mine.
Yeah, let's not get into a technical discussion on that, because that would go on for way too long. However, more on the price side of things, the airdrop initially was distributed to almost 600K users, and I think we've and you had, as you perfectly mentioned, that I mentioned airdrop on top of that, and I think we're seeing the same pattern play out again, where you had this peak at the beginning of the year, you had obviously the airdrops coming in after that for the TIA stakers, the TIA holders, and then you have this 6-month period where people who don't want to be part of the ecosystem, who just bought TIA because they wanted access to additional airdrops, are selling off. And then after 6 months, only you can tell what the token will do. I think we talked about this study a few times on the show that looked at basically all the major airdrops and has found that 6 months after an airdrop, or for the 6 months after an airdrop, it's down only. And then the decisive momentum kicks in, where either the token will go to zero, stay at zero if it's already there, or it will revert back to what is a quote unquote fair price, because the airdrop farmers are out by that time.
That's a fair point. Do you think there's something that's happening in the market more generally, though? Because I've seen this across a number of different sectors, even ones that have a lot of sell pressure have the sell pressure is kind of abating. I know the market's like picked up very slightly, and ETH's rebounded and Bitcoin's rebounded. Everything's rebounded a touch. Something like Portal, which had in what felt like infinite sell pressure for a little while, opened up a very high valuation, multi-billion, is as low as 500, 600 million now. And I think the token price went to about 25 cents. But it's kind of been rising. Feels like it's just kind of abated a little bit. Have you noticed that across different other different sectors as well? And is there like a point at which people think there's no point selling here, even if there's still a lot of sell pressure to come?
Yeah, probably. I mean, obviously we had the ETH recovery as well, right? ETH is up 14%, Portal is up 22% over the last 7 days. So it's
just kind of tracking.
It's tracking with a bit of extra green because it has more volatility. But if you didn't sell Portal at 27 cents or at 25 cents last week, and now ETH is up, you wouldn't sell now just because it pumped a bit more than ETH. Like if you wait for redeeming momentum, you're rather waiting for it to show more significant price action that actually outperforms the ETH price performance by more than just 7%. So I would agree with your thesis that if you've been holding until now, there's no point in selling now. And I do think that this is a reasonable thought that a lot of traders will hold. Obviously, you still can have the one massive whale that says, nope, I'm out now, and dump the price. But generally, I would definitely agree with that sentiment of yours.
Yeah, because I definitely know some people have absolutely huge positions in that one in particular. And when I look at the chart, I am literally imagining those people because I know the unlocks and I know the people and how much they bought in initially. And I'm just imagining them like turning up to their computer one day and just deciding, right, this is the day. And so I typically sell before them, but I just have felt recently that, I think there's a bit of fatigue from selling. People starting to wonder, like, is there any point? That's something to bear in mind. But obviously that happens.
This is what I think about CBB, with the recent posts by CBB about Blast, and basically criticizing Blast nonstop on the one hand, on the other hand still admitting that they still have a good 7-figure bag in the token. I'm wondering if at one day CBB will wake up and they're going to be like, nope, we are selling. We don't want to engage in this beef on X anymore. We don't want to look at the bags anymore. We are basically out. So could be, couldn't be. We'll see.
That's what keeps this space interesting. You never know when a whale is just going to wake up and just absolutely nuke it all. Keeps it interesting and important to be aware of, because obviously we've just identified two things where we know that it's there, and so it's just important and to inform your decision making from that respect. Let's get into the next one. This is to do with some federal judge criticism of the SEC for refusing to answer straight questions on Bitcoin and ETH. This is to do with the hearings that Coinbase have been participating in, where a panel of federal appeal court judges in Philadelphia appeared skeptical on Monday of the US SEC's longstanding refusal to issue specific rules related to the sale of crypto tokens. In some way, this is like a repeat story, because we've noticed a bunch of frustration with this regard when people have been, whether that's Congress or other people, kind of pressing Gary Gensler or any of their associates, and you've kind of seen them kind of clutching at straws, trying to think of how they're supposed to answer this. In essence, this is what happened during an afternoon hearing before the US Court of Appeals from the Third Circuit. Lawyers for Coinbase and the SEC squared off over whether the regulator should be obligated to clarify its rules about crypto after years of effectively regulating by enforcement. What they said was multiple judges seemed to be flummoxed during the conversation when the SEC's attorney refused to clarify on the record whether his agency views Bitcoin and Ethereum as commodities. One of them said, "You won't even tell us how the Howey test applies to Bitcoin or Ether. Those tokens have been around for a long time, but you won't take a position in front of us as to whether Coinbase is safe if they deal or don't deal in Bitcoin and Ether." So I think this is not necessarily a news story. It's just an update to that, where there seems to be more legal pushback against the SEC for their lack of regulatory clarity. Maybe a final point, which is kind of strongly worded. One of the judges said, "I don't see the reasoning. It almost looks to an outside observer as if you're going after crypto platforms in a way that will crush the industry without really getting into rulemaking." So fairly strong words there. I would personally, in order for me to like fully get behind this article and be able to report fully from my perspective as a former lawyer, I would also want to see like what their responses are. Obviously, this is the crypto platforms, this is from Decrypt reporting on it. So, you know, maybe it makes people more excited to hate on the SEC. Remember, in President Trump's speech at the Bitcoin conference, nothing got a louder cheer than saying than when he wanted to fire Gary Gensler. So, like, there is some aspect of reporting on the SEC which people just enjoy saying that they're stupid or dumb and whatever. So I'm always conscious of that. I would like to see the full transcript and see how the full conversation went. But nevertheless, I think that's kind of confirming the general legal position. Legendary. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important article. I'm glad we have it as part of the show. I saw Tyler was breaking the news yesterday. Was honestly surprised that it didn't get a lot of traction, because I do think that this is important, because it's a major difference. Obviously, agree with you. Haven't read the transcripts either, so I'm basing this on that article. There's a major difference if, you know, Trump in a presidential rally or a conference speech is saying, "I'm going to fire Gary Gensler day one," or if this is an opinion that's held in court, criticizing the SEC that they're not really doing the rulemaking that they're supposed to do and that they're not answering direct questions. But with that being said, we do have our US correspondent Funky with us with his hand raised. I knew it that he will have something to say on this topic. So Funky, I'm going to go straight to you.
GM gang, yeah, just something that I think is an important note. First and foremost, Trump, even if he were to win, he does not have the power to fire Gary Gensler, as much as that fired up the crowd. And there was a lot of talk about that on the TL. So, but more importantly, whether or not Trump ever gets reelected, many people ignore perhaps the greatest legacy that he will leave behind during his tenure from 16 to 20. That man put more conservative judges on the bench than I think any president in history. I want to say it was something absurd, like over 500. I will look up the number and get it for you. But I remember a lot of people talking about, even after he left office, that his presence will be felt for generations because of this. So as someone who is not necessarily a fan of Trump, I'm very much a fan of having these kinds of judges on the benches who are going to push back against this absolute nonsense from the SEC, because this is going to, even if Harris were to win, this is still going to be a battle in the courts, and it's going to be something that's going to hopefully bring that regulatory clarity much sooner.
Interesting stuff. I definitely would love to see some of that additional info, Funky, in terms of the context of the process. As a former lawyer, I'd be kind of just intrigued by that, and would be interested to see, well, if someone loads the bench, can't the other side just load the bench after, and then it just becomes a battle where you just keep loading the bench? So please do share any extra information you have. Maybe a final reflection on this from Han. Like, you've obviously been in the space for a long time, investing a great deal. How have you found the general trajectory of Bitcoin and Ether this cycle? Obviously, we have the ETFs, we have still a bit of challenging situations with the SEC. Any general thoughts on how crypto is kind of taking its steps forward in the US?
Yeah, I feel that we are directionally correct. I think, for example, the article here is just another step in the, I think, inevitable rise of these two majors being included as part of the world's economies, and then for America, I really appreciate that we still have an independent judiciary, which allows us to find truth, and it pierces through a lot of the politics, a lot of the shenanigans that happen, and so really appreciate these moments when they arise. And I think it'll take time, but we're well on the way to having Bitcoin, Ethereum be included as part of the major global economies. And this cycle, I think it's going to become self-evident in, I think, 2 years that it has, this is the moment that it has broken through.
Love it. And very important point on the independent judiciary. I know just the justice system in the States and elsewhere is not perfect, but like for these types of things, it does appear to be at least serving its purpose. Legendary, I know you had a final point on this before we hit the final headline, and we get into that shape breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to confirm Funky's point, because I looked up the numbers for Trump. And during his one term in office, he nominated 274 individuals to federal judgeships. He made 245 judicial appointments. Of those appointments, 234 were Article 3 judges, Article 3 governing the federal law. And that is a very, very, very high number indeed.
Okay. Do we know what that is relative to other people, though? That would be the only way I would know if that's very high.
On the quick research, I saw Obama thing who nominated 55.
Oh.
And I don't know if it was during Obama 1 or Obama 2 or both of his presidencies, but that would be a reference number.
Funky, did I hear you coming in there?
Yeah, there's an article I dropped. Sorry for misspeaking when I said 500. I knew it was hundreds, so I should have checked that before I said anything. But there's an article from Pew Research that shows a comparative chart, and it basically says for a one-term president, he did more than anybody else. So like it shows Obama and others that have had multiple judges go to the bench, so on and so forth. And plus, he also, for better or worse, I mean, a lot of people hate the fact that they went to the Supreme Court because of time appointments, and that changed the temper for a long time, especially like Roe v. Wade.
Okay. Let's move on. We were going to move on anyway, getting into the technical legalities of some of the kind of legal process here. Appreciate the additional information, though. Interesting to keep in mind. Let's get to the final headline for today before we get into the shape breakdown. Legendary, I know you'll probably be excited about this, and a lot of people are building prediction markets out. They think it's the next hype thing. Do you want to just give us a few minutes breakdown of what we learned from the potential Polymarket news in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we have this topic of rumors and then official rumors in this space, and we've already been rumoring Polymarket might cook up a token. And now we still have a rumor, but it is a bit more official in the sense that there's a news article that I'm sharing on screen from CoinDesk that speaks to Polymarket currently seeking, sorry, B, I'm going to mute you real quick, seeking 50 mil in funding. And as part of that, there is an undisclosed source that says that Polymarket is looking into a potential token as a way for users to validate the outcome of real-world events. Quick reminder on that: if there's a bet on Polymarket, the rules are defined up front, obviously, and once there's an outcome, that outcome can be challenged, and there's going to be a review of that, and it can be resolved either way. We had this process play out, for example, with the Ethereum ETFs, and the question, when they are approved, what filing exactly needs to be approved for the bet to count as a positive outcome. So that process has been in place, and the rumors basically are there that the token will, in a certain way, become part of that validation process. There's no more details on that because the question is also a bit more complex, because obviously you can't just say, if there's 1 billion tokens and 501 million vote, yep, the outcome is yes on that, this is how the outcome will play out, because then the platform would be ripe for manipulation, because anyone who gets together and has the majority stake, whether that's a simple majority or a 2/3 majority, could then just change the outcome of bets. So if that will be a regulatory mechanism, it has to be way more detailed than just voting and by that defining the result of the bet. But once again, there is no source on that. It is an article that cited anonymous sources for that potential token. So there's nothing more than those rumors that appear to be a bit more substantiated in a couple of weeks before on the timeline that we can share at the moment on this end.
Sure. So it's definitely a bit of a meta conversation here, which is like, what do we think about the rumors? Do we think that the rumors are accurate? I don't know. Sometimes it's a bit of a debate to what extent we discuss this type of stuff, but our position has always been like, look, it is a headline. People are reporting it as a headline. Whether it's properly substantiated or not, it's probably worth talking about it and then just caveating with, like, look, it's not necessarily guaranteed. Legendary, I know you've been participating in Polymarket. Are you still finding it to be much better on the product side than any of the other alternatives? Have you explored some of the other ones? I know Drift has done one. That's a very prominent one on Solana. Or is your attention solely on Polymarket? You think they're the winner in that category for this cycle? How are you thinking about it?
I think more important than the features right now is just the liquidity, and Polymarket is definitely dominating on that end. In terms of the usability, we also have Predictable Fund, which is on Blast, which is pretty similar, or exactly a lookalike of Polymarket. But liquidity to me is king. Like, thinking about the recent bet that I had on ThreadGuy on the question whether he would interview Trump or not, which again had this bizarre rule set where it was just sufficient.
Why don't you just explain that to people? Because that was
Yeah.
was an awesome bet from you, but explain why the rules are almost more important than the headline bet.
Exactly. So the headline bet was, will ThreadGuy interview Trump? So obviously you will think about this as a full podcast, like the one that he did with Tate. But if you looked at the rules were one question that ThreadGuy asks and Trump answers, which is being recorded on video, is an interview. And I made the post a month ago that said, if ThreadGuy is at an event somewhere in the audience and screams, "Yo, Trump, what's up?" and Trump says, "Yo," basically that would count. And it was a bit more than that. He was at the event where ThreadGuy paid the 25K, which he made a couple of posts on to attend. And he was in the audience, and he basically yelled a question at Trump from the audience. Trump answered it. That was recorded. That video was published. Hence, the bet resolved in a positive way. And back then, it was a 10% chance when I entered, so a 12% chance. So it was like an 8x for myself. But that's exactly the point. You need to look at the bets. You need to look at the rules. And obviously, you want to have liquidity in that, because if you find a bet that's interesting and you're like, okay, these rules are pretty lax, that could be a nice bet to make, but there's only $200 in there, then it doesn't make sense. And that bet at least had, I think, back then 20K and ended up to be a 6-figure bet when it got closer to resolving.
I like it. Very, very important. As always, read the rules, guys. Read the fine print. That seems to be the crucial thing to do when, not just when you're doing the Polymarket bets, but in general. But yeah, clearly some alpha in reading, which is, to be honest, nice to know if you are able to read, of course. Look, those are the headlines for today. We are going to get into a special segment today. As we mentioned yesterday, we announced not only did we rebrand, but we wanted to announce a very special partnership with Shape L2. Shape is something that our special guest today, Han, kind of told me about a few months ago, and there was a real spirit to it, which I very much enjoyed. The spirit to kind of try to reinvigorate on-chain art and culture. And we didn't necessarily know that we would would work together at the time, but we seemed to be aligned, and we seemed to think that, you know, we had a similar vision or similar maybe set of principles of how we maybe thought about the space and the way forward. Shapes attracted some of the biggest artists and collectors in the space, like the very, very biggest. I'm going to give Hannah a chance to kind of explain those in just a little bit. And we're very honored to be the media home through which these artists will share their art with the world. So from as soon as next week, we will have one of the very top artists in the world joining us on the show, and we'll be doing that once a week. So we're like very, very excited about that. Han, wanted to give you a chance to kind of share from your perspective what you're excited about, why you wanted to enter into this partnership as well, and then we'll get into some of the story behind it, because I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, I am super excited that we are in this partnership together. And I remember that when we met up in where you were living.
London. It was London.
Okay, I didn't know you were talks. Yeah.
So I do the same thing sometimes when I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what am I supposed to say about the location? But I remember distinctly, you know, when we were sitting down and we spent some time together. You know, we really didn't know that we're going to work together. It was like, hey, I heard about you, wanted to meet up with you. I'm in London. And then we had that good chat. And what I love about these things is that when we are aligned and have the same goals and values, then it eventually turns into something really interesting. And the part that I found so cool about the Modern Market is you guys have been doing this like on a daily basis. So what I have found in life is that whatever it is, if something is being done on a daily basis, the level of execution and dedication that you need to do something on a daily basis and produce daily, in this case, content, it really is something that I admire. And then I found the vibes on the show and the way that you guys all focus on, all the news that's happening and your belief in NFTs. It just aligned with Shape in such a big way, and it was like there was no other, and this was the best partnership that could come out of a place for us to discuss art, place to discuss NFTs and all the things in Shape. So I'm really glad that we're doing this together.
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's just so funny how the universe works out in a way. I put out this tweet the other day to say, like, one of the reasons I came into this space in 2021 was art. Like, strangely enough, I was not in crypto before 2021, and NFTs, digital art, got me in. Like, I was by no means a NFT. I was by no means an art expert or an art connoisseur. I used to go to galleries in my free time as a lawyer, almost as a way to escape the crazy corporate law life and just look at some nice pictures as a peaceful way to spend a weekend. And that's what got me in. I bought an edition of Xcopy as my first foray into digital art back in January 2021 or something like that. It was an edition on Nifty Gateway. And I just thought it was cool that these digital artists had some way to make money by selling art direct. I thought that was an amazing thing that had happened, and I wanted to participate. And it's funny that was the first thing that got me into the space. And now 3 years later, just by the way of the universe, we'll be hosting, some of the best digital artists in the world on this show. And that's just like, for all the different journey, like to get to this point in the journey, there's been ups and downs and going in like different directions, covering different aspects of the market. But the fact that art was one of the main partnerships for us is like super exciting to me. So I'm super glad that we met and that we clicked and that we're going to be doing this. But I think people will be super excited when you guys start to reveal the artists. But I'd love to give you a chance to speak to the story on why Shape was able to attract the best artists and collectors in the world, because it's not an easy job to, I guess, build the momentum and build the cohesion between lots of different people to bring them together. So I think there's probably 4 sections I want to talk about here, and maybe your personal collecting journey first, which I guess started at Then there's Deca, which maybe people do or don't know about. And then this kind of tour that you went on when you met different people around the world. Would love to hear about that. I think that's really interesting. But maybe your collecting journey at the start, that would be interesting to start with.
Yeah. Before that, I think to describe in just a couple sentences, like why we have been able to assemble some of the most amazing artists in the space on Shape. I think ultimately they are attracted to the philosophy of Shape, and I'll talk about that in more detail later. But it is a culture first home for artists. When Ethereum scales, there will be subcultures and every part of the crypto community will have its own home, and Shape being that home for artists and culture, that is the part that has really attracted all the artists. And and just as your experience with crypto actually started with art, like my own experience really started with art as well. So long time ago, of course, when I heard about Bitcoin, when I heard about Ethereum, I put a little bit of money into it, but it didn't pull my soul into it. And
it was just a financial thing at that time. It didn't pull you properly.
Exactly. I thought it was good. that stuff was good, but it didn't pull my soul in. And the part that really pulled me in, and that's my personal collecting story, is when I saw the art that was being created here. So somebody had told me, hey, go look at NFTs, and at the time I had bought a couple punks, bought a couple apes. And at the time, I was like, okay, cool. I guess that's it. But I didn't really get NFTs until somebody said, hey, go check this new piece of art that is being minted on art blocks called Fidenza. And so I dug into it. First of all, I fell in love with the art. I dug into it. The fact that they're eternal pieces of art, as long as the underlying JavaScript machinery is still able to be run, and then of course in the future I think will be emulated if we ever go beyond JavaScript. But getting into the technical details, once I got into it, I was like, wow, these are eternal tokens that represent art, and you can actually reproduce the art at high fidelity at any time. And I realized this is the future of art, and so that's where I got into art. And
you started collecting basically like a madman for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was definitely an obsession, bordering on an addiction.
And it was Fidenzas which particularly captured you. Do you know how many Fidenzas you now have? How many did you get up to in the end?
So I got up to 56 Fidenzas at the time, and yeah, when I say it was an obsession, it really was an obsession. And I got all of them on secondary, right? It was I was offering maybe like +3 sigma on price, maybe 4 sigma. Everybody was saying, "Oh my god, why are you paying so much for this thing? You don't even know what's gonna happen to this thing." And yeah, I was completely obsessed with them. I ended up trading 12 of them for Incomplete Controls by Tyler. So it was like 1-to-1. So I still have 56 works by Tyler.
Nice.
And then throughout that journey, I actually realized, hey, I want to build a powerful way to show these NFT tokens.
And that led you to Deca then. So Deca is what came before Shape, before the L2 that you're building now. You arrived at Deca. Do you want to just explain that experience and maybe your experience as a builder there, what you were trying to build out, and how that then linked to Shape?
Exactly. So if you think about these NFTs, they're like digital objects that like exist on a decentralized chain, and so you need we are humans and we have the physical senses to experience physical objects, but we don't have a native way to experience these digital objects. So the entirety of Deca's mission was to create the best place to experience these digital objects. And it started with things like, okay, being able to create a gallery. And then later it became being able to see an artist's entire body of work. And then it continued to, hey, seeing a collector's entire collection across all wallets. And we've progressively been making steps towards the ultimate journey of being able to experience these tokens.
Amazing. Before we get into maybe the chain stuff specifically, let's talk about like the building consensus, because when we think about the question, when everyone's thinking about the question, like how did you attract the best artists? I know you spoke about culture and collectors a little bit, but I know that when we met, you were kind of on this world tour, meeting people, getting to know people. I guess maybe trying to size people up in a sense, like, look, would you be aligned? Are you aligned with this vision? Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Who, I don't know, maybe you can't say the artist names because then that would reveal who's coming. But do you want to, what are you able to say about that process?
Yeah, that world tour was a little bit insane. I think I visited.
How many countries did you go to? Because you were off all over the place. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I don't remember the exact number of countries or cities, but often I would fly into a city, book into an airport hotel, and then go meet the person, and then come back to the hotel, sleep, and then fly out. So sometimes for a lot of these cities, all I saw was the hotel, the airport, and the place where I was meeting the person, and that's all I saw. So it was quite the whirlwind.
I find that so interesting, though. The reason why I find that so interesting is because people think about like how to scale, right, and how to build community, and how to build digital community. People talk about spinning up Discords and DMing people and jumping on calls with people. And look, I know it might be out of the realms of possibility for the majority of people to literally go visit people, but it's fascinating that was at least part of the process of properly connecting with people and properly, coming to terms and coming to agreements with people. I just find that fascinating because I think a lot of people think that the digital can bridge the gap now, and just that you can do business in purely digitally. And I think that process was very eye-opening to me.
Yeah, I think at some point I think the digital could replace, but even now for deep topics and connections on a deep way, there really is no substitute for meeting a person in person. And so that was an important part of so some of these artists I'd actually been in contact with and chatted with for years, and that was sometimes the first time that we met. And through that, we established, well, of course, through our years of connections, we already had a rapport, but meeting the person in person and spending time with them established like a deep rapport with that person. And then I was able to effectively communicate the philosophy behind Shape. And you mentioned.
So do you want to speak to that a little bit then, like the philosophy behind Shape and how you're going to create the right culture? What is the philosophy? Why is it so important for the artists and everyone and the collectors as well? Because remember, it's not just artists that you've managed to attract the best; it's also the people on the collector side. What is that philosophy, and why was it so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about in the last NFT cycle, where did culture land? Where did culture coalesce? And a lot of that answer goes to Ethereum L1. A lot of the NFTs that were produced that people desired, many of them were created on ETH L1. And if you analyze, like, okay, why is that the case? I have several theses, but one of them that I think is important is that truly Ethereum L1 was one of the places where neutral land, it became neutral land, on top of which everybody could believe and build and trust. And so as Ethereum goes through the scaling of through various L2s, the same premise, I believe, will hold, that a lot of the culture in Ethereum and across crypto will land on a place where it is neutral land and is truly, credibly neutral. And so the philosophy behind Shape is to ultimately create neutral land on top of which everyone can create and build, and that is how culture will take root. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, why do you think this neutral land point seems to be very important? Why do you think that there are other places where they've become less neutral? We have this debate a lot on the show about how ETH is scaling and how the L2 business model has kind of skewed in favor of a lot of these L2s. Like, what's the perspective there?
Yeah. This ultimately, when we say neutral land, it ultimately goes to the topic of decentralization, and
Sure.
It is a deep topic and has a lot of gradients when it comes to, like, which areas are decentralized and in what ways, and ultimately decentralization is a forever story. You're actually never done with decentralization because every stack along the way, there's some element of centralization, whether it's like client diversity, whether it's the infrastructure upon which you're deployed, whether it's like the protocol itself, or whether it's the, if there's a token, the token distribution, who controls it, and mechanics of the government governance. If you think about like early days of prior to Web3, like there's parliamentary procedures and ways that a governing body works, and those technical details would determine how governance is actually done. And so it's a story that never ends. And it's a fight that we always have to be pushing, and there's various levels of decentralization across all the chains. And the thing that I would look out for is you want to see early proof that it is headed in that direction. So, for example, in Ethereum L2s, we are a little bit leaning towards the current state of the world is that we are leaning towards centralization, and thankfully we have Vitalik himself guiding and shepherding the process of decentralization for a lot of the frameworks and networks that exist. And so we're progressively going through all the stages, step 1, step 2, and etc., or stage 1 and stage 2, and etc.
Amazing.
But the part that I want, let me just say one more thing. The part that really was different for Shape is the following. A lot of the rollups, demonstrably, it is true that a lot of the rollups are running in a centralized way, but here's the part that is very different for Shape. Because we're giving up or giving away 97, 98% of the sequencer fees, what we have built is early proof points that we are fully going to decentralize Shape. And how does that work? Well, because we're giving away 90% of the sequencer fees, we're actually incentivized to decentralize Shape as quickly as possible. Because running the chain actually costs a lot of money, and we're paying upfront and we're paying the costs. So the earlier that we decentralize, we will be able to basically create a world where everybody can help secure the network, and we will no longer have to be paying upfront to run the chain. And so that's the big proof point for Shape.
Amazing. I think that's a really important thing. Sometimes as ETH is scaling, a lot of people make the argument that the decentralization becomes less important. Some people even make the argument that ultimately the end user doesn't care about it. But it feels like you guys, as part of that establishment of culture, of creating this credible, neutral place, are placing a really high importance on it. And a lot of the trust almost stems from that. So I think that's really, really cool. As we wrap up, we've just got a few minutes left for the show. I wanted to give you a chance to speak to the expectations of what we can expect from Shape in the next few weeks. What are you able to say at this point in time? I know next week is going to be exciting. I actually know the week after that is also going to be super exciting. I think even the week after that's going to be exciting. But what are you able to say at the moment? What can our listeners expect and get accustomed to over the next few weeks?
Yeah, the next couple of weeks is actually going to be insane. It's going to be so many cool things that are going to be happening in Shape. Because of the real belief that everyone has in Shape because of things like the things that I mentioned. All these big artists will be creating truly groundbreaking works that will challenge what we think of as like what is an NFT. And so we're going to be exploring all these artists. They're going to be exploring the full range of what can be done. And on an L2 where computation becomes cheap and storage is also cheap, we will be able to see NFTs come to life. The immediate thing that'll be really cool that we announced is the Shape rotation, where we wanted to help people understand that collecting on L2s, especially on a chain that will become decentralized, is real. And with the Shape rotation, you basically see there's such recognizable household names of collectors, and they will all be collecting on Shape. And then also a big part of the Shape rotation is that even if you're not on that list, when we see that you've made a purchase and you kind of like publicly state that you've made the purchase, the core team will kind of like be paying attention to the TL on X/Twitter, and we will randomly we'll say like, hey, go check your wallet. We just reimbursed you for that purchase. So it's going to be really fun. And then we have a huge artist that's dropping. There is like a big, really fun mechanic that we designed that'll be dropping as well. And so many interesting projects. I just wanted to call out for like Shunks, which is a derivative project for CryptoPunks on Shape. We've seen these organically projects like develop organically. So many interesting things are going to happen. Can't wait for 9:30 and see you all next week.
Good stuff. Sounds very, very exciting. As you said, I think the collectors have committed. I've seen the list of collectors committed to spend $250,000 with a kind of additional $250 being thrown into the pot. So that spending power is going to be there. So I think it's an interesting opportunity to, as you say, kind of bring back some of that art and culture energy that we really, really enjoyed in 2021. That's what I'm looking out for. That is the end of the show today, guys. Han, thanks so much for joining us. Really interesting conversation. And I know we're going to have lots more interesting conversations in the weeks to come. Thanks so much, man.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
As always, guys, Legendary going quick with the music. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X, we're live on YouTube, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Legendary, for co-hosting, and thank you to our official American correspondent, Funky, for contributing as always. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.